Well, welcome to another edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And you might be looking at this fellow. He's got his Movember going here, a couple days and it's gone. And you might go, why do I know him? But if you go to any Mooseheads games, you're going to recognize this voice. Can you give us the voice, Ian, just before we...
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah. Hey, Moose Country, let's hear it for the beast of the East, your Halifax Mooseheads. That's a condensed version.
No, absolutely. And, it's funny because I should know this. I'm a musician and I'm, sometimes a microphone totally... I mean, you've got the radio voice, and I'm sure, you've heard that 1,000 times, right? What you did just there in a little microphone sounded exactly like it does at the Metro Center. Ian Robinson, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So,
Hey, John.
yeah, great to see you. So are you still doing some stuff in radio?
Yeah, still do radio. I'm on the Hot Country 103.5 radio station here in Halifax, and I'm also networked out of Halifax. I'm on the midday show from 10 to 2 here in Halifax, as well as in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia on Country 100.7, and as well Country 94, St. John, New Brunswick, and in Thunder Bay, Ontario at Country 105. So I think I got all 4 stations. So I'm on 4 stations at the same time. So it's kind of wild.
So you're a business, and everybody knows, but the business that you're part of now has really changed from, like I know John Biggs really well, and I know Nicole Belfonte. Yeah, and I mean,
Nicole,
your business has totally changed from what it was to what it is now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like, we're not playing records. Like, I'm in my 40th year of the business. So seeing the changes over the years when the computers came in and took over, we used to have to record on tape, and now I'm here in my home studio now recording on Adobe Audition. So it's there are pros and cons of having computers around. The sad part is there's not as many jobs, but it's the way of technology today. So luckily I've been able to hang on through the years and still be on the radio and do what I love to do.
Well, you're fortunate because, a lot of the radio people I know, that whole, WKRP song is true. You're from town to town, packing and unpacking. I mean, you're almost like you're in the forces or something, right? You got to go where the next gig is. And a lot of people maybe don't get that.
Yeah, that's it. I was lucky. I started in Sydney at CJCB CKPE back in 1984 and spent 3 years there. I came to Halifax in 1987 and been here ever since. And yeah, it's been a great career, great run. Worked on a bunch of stations here in Halifax. I've pretty much been around the dial here in Halifax, that's for sure. But, did some time at CHNS as well as CJCH, C100. The list goes on. Cool FM, Q104, did 10 years of the Q. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary with Q104 there back on the weekend. And so I'm glad to be at Hot Country 103.5 in my 7th year, I think, here now. And so it's just a neat business to be in, and the friends that you make in the business are friends for life.
No, absolutely. And you were at the Q104 on Saturday night?
I wasn't at the concert. I had a voiceover session, ironically, with the boss that hired me for my first gig in Sydney. We did a bunch of Christmas vignettes here in my studio, so I was booked for doing that with Dave Reynolds, who was a former Hockey Night in Canada host back in the 70s and worked in Sydney radio as well over the years. But I didn't make it to the concert, but we had a private greeting on Friday night over at Garrison, and we saw some faces that we haven't seen in years. So great to see the likes of Lisa Blackburn, and as well, who else was there? Of course, the current on-air staff, Jamie Patterson, Lisa's better half, and Bob Powers, the legend himself. So great to see the Power Breakfast there, and Rich Horner. The list goes on of the names that have been on Q104 over the years, and I was glad to be a part of the Mighty Q between 2008 and 2016 before I moved over to Hot.
Well, you know what? It's I guess a little 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here. So my guitar player, Mark Horton, was actually one of the guys that put that show on for the Q104 people on Saturday night, and it went well. So that's fantastic.
Awesome.
So we're going to cover the Mooseheads and your thing there, but you, part of the reason why. So I interviewed your wife Roxanne last week for Christmas Daddies. Didn't know the connection. She says, "Oh, you should talk to Ian. He's got a book that came out." And I was like, "That's interesting," because I'm trying to expand my base. Yeah. So let's talk about this book. I mean, like, how did it come about?
Well, Sean, it came about ironically through radio, and as I said, I owe everything to radio. So even finding my wife, met Roxanne at radio and TV at CTV and CJCH 100 when we're in the same building there back in the late '80s. But yeah, so the book came together as a result of a feature that I was doing on Hot Country 103.5 that was called The Bad Dad Joke, and Dana Thompson and I did it on the morning show. People would not get out of their car until they heard the Bad Dad Joke around 7:40 every morning. Kelly Rickard as well went through the torture with me. So over the years, the publisher heard this, and Vernon Oikel, who is with McIntyre Purcell Publishing at the time, he sent me an email. He was like, "Ian, have you ever thought of doing a joke book?" And I said, "Not really, but let's see what we can do." So I sent down some demo scripts, and here we are, 2 years later with this book in hand with 200 and was it 223 jokes and 152 pages in between the covers. And originally it was supposed to be a generic Bad Dad joke book, but then with my profile with the Mooseheads, Vernon said, "Well, why don't you write some hockey jokes?" So I sent down 100. They said, "That's great. Send me down another 100." Sent down another 100. That came to 200. They said, "That's great. Send us down another 100." So yeah, it became 365 jokes was what I was shooting for a joke a day for every day of the year, and it was whittled down to what we have here now in the book.
So you sent me a couple, and it was funny because it was like at first you're going, but then you're going like, you know what, these are really funny. And in an age where you really have to, I guess, watch what you say nowadays, and it's not like it would have been, 15, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're able to inject some really good humor without really crossing any lines. It's a really fun thing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, basically, Sean, it's written for kids. Both of my kids grew up playing hockey, high level, and both of them were officials, Drake and Trent. Drake continued his officiating career, and he's one of the high level referees around here in Nova Scotia. He's in AUS and Junior A, and hopefully someday he'll get to work in the Q. We actually worked a game together back in 2019.
Oh.
He was called up to the Q, and I think it was the first father-son referee, public address announcer to ever work in the Q. So to get to work a game together with him, that was pretty neat. And an exhibition game between Halifax and Cape Breton. But, they were great barometers, as well as Roxanne, who had a bunch of brothers growing up playing hockey. So she spent her time in the rinks with her six brothers. And so between Roxanne and the boys and I'd bounce jokes off of them at the supper table, and they'd say, "That's a good one, Dad. Put that one in the book." "No, don't put that one in the book, Dad." So yeah, it all came together. And one of my favorite ones that I like is why did why did the hockey player keep on taking?
Oh, we lost you there for a second. Did you turn your microphone off? Did you turn your microphone off, Ian? We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, there we go. So I'm sorry. So repeat the joke again.
Okay, that was actually my son that was calling that interrupted the call.
Oh,
Drake,
yeah,
the
yeah.
referee.
Thank you,
Okay,
Drake.
here we go. Take two. The beauty of live podcasting here.
Absolutely.
Why did the hockey player take Buckley's? Because he was always coughing up the puck.
Yeah. Well, there's I'm sure there's a joke or two in there about somebody not knowing his own goaltender's name or something like that. We always joke around with that in the thing. So
Yeah.
what part? Where did your boys play?
Drake played both. Drake and Trent played Tassa. Drake also played for Sir John A. as well with the high school hockey team. Now I think it's the Bay Sharks is what they're being called.
Yeah.
But back then, about 10 years ago, he was the Sir John A. Flames, and he also played a little junior B with the Brookfield Elks as well. So
I know them well.
yeah. Yeah, and his referee career has really taken off, and he's actually been assigned to work the Para Cup coming up this weekend. It's on December 3rd to 9th in Quispamsis, New Brunswick, just outside of St. John, where his mom was born. So he's kind of go back to his home roots there, and he refereed it last year as well down in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. So you got the assignment here twice, and he says it's pretty different from refereeing normal hockey because the sledge hockey players they're pretty fast with their passes, and he's normally with a good save by a goalie, he'll go up and tap the goalie's glove, but their gloves have the sharp spikes on them to get them
Right.
around the net. So he was like, "Well, yeah, I got to watch what I'm doing there, Dad."
Tear your knuckles off for sure.
Yeah.
So how long? And so there's going to be something really neat on next Friday night. The Mooseheads are playing. I'm actually going to go in and do an in between period thing with the guys. And that night we're airing a piece that I did with Peter Bayless because Peter's a longtime anthem singer.
Yep.
How long have you been with the Mooseheads? Because I was a season ticket holder, and I want to say I started going to those games in like 2005, 2006. How long have you been there?
Well, I'll give you the Coles Note story of it. I started in 1997, and that was with Pat Conley and I. So I was back then the DJ slash promo announcer. So Pat would do the goals and the penalties, and I would do everything else. For example, introducing the players and then doing the 3 stars. And how I got the job, kind of a funny story here, Sean. My wife Roxanne, who you interviewed, sent me to Sobeys to get some groceries. So I actually ran into a friend of mine, Mark Church, who was an usher at the time back then at the Metro Center, and he said, "I hear the Mooseheads are looking for a promo announcer slash DJ." So I just sent off what we call air checks, radio tapes of back in the day. So I dropped it off to Matt McKnight, and he called me into the office. It was June 23rd, 1997, and he said, "Do you want the job?" And I'm sure. So anyway, my first game was the Cape Breton Eagles against Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, I guess back then against the Mooseheads. That was September 20th, 1997, and been there ever since. And as I said earlier, coming up for 1,100 games in December on December 16th.
That's incredible. And it's funny because I was a season ticket holder for probably 4 years. I went. My oldest son at the time obviously loved going to the Mooseheads games. And I would hear you there. And then I went to a basketball game. I think it was some sort of world championships or something. And they had this other guy doing the announcing. I'm like, this is really weird. This is not Ian Robinson. And honestly, I was just like, I didn't enjoy it. And it was probably the familiarity, maybe. But you seem
Yeah.
to have your timbre when you talk. I'm not going to say you're a whisperer, but you're not like you don't yell. You've got a very controlled way of doing things when you work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's quite an honor to get to do this gig, to take over for Pat Connolly. Pat was a legend who
Mm.
did sports and around here for decades. So when the opportunity came in 2009, after doing 532 games upstairs with music and the promoing, announcing, I got to take over for Pat. And I learned some things from Pat over the years, and it's funny. Here's a story about Nathan. One game I missed. Her son Drake was in high school provincials, so I didn't want to miss this. This was his final games. They're taking place up in my home and native land in Cape Breton, up in Sydney. So technically from Big Brador, by the way. My residents from Big Brador get upset. You're not from Sydney. You're from Big Brador.
Well,
But
I'm
anyway,
actually originally from Sydney, so
you know how the capers get. You got to
yes,
be
I do.
precise where you're from, right?
Not
So
only
anyway,
that, not only that, they all talk about leaving Cape Breton, but you make any jokes about it, and they fight you to the death. So yes, I'm totally.
you get some Cape Breton bingo, five
Yep,
under the eye, right? Just like
that's
that.
right.
But anyway, I missed a couple of games. It was the start of or one of the games in the run of 2013. So the night we won the cup, Nathan's mom, Kathy, said to me, it was like, "Yeah, Ian, you missed the first couple of games there at the start of the playoffs." And Sarah was there, and she was like, "Mom, I don't like this. Ian's not here." So I guess you become a part of the brand, part of the sound of the game, and a part of the experience, and that's quite an honor.
Well, and I mean, I've so when I started, Kevin Cameron was the president, and then he
Yep,
moved on,
Kevin.
and Urquhart was doing it, and Travis
Mhm.
Kennedy, and
Yep.
Shannon Slaughter was there for a bit. I remember them all.
Yeah,
Um,
Shannon. Yeah.
but yeah, they used well, even Donnie Powell. It was like, they used to say you'll go out and get slaughtered if you hang out with Shannon. But it's a product that it doesn't change things up a lot, but it keeps like people just eat it up, right? They just eat it up.
Yeah. Well, we've got the marketing. There's a certain recipe, there's a certain magic to it. And, it's funny how other teams come in and they're trying to figure out that magic sauce, that magic recipe that we have.
Mhm.
But, you just keep it simple and, the people enjoy it. And we've become known around the Q League and the CHL as well as, the model franchise in the country. So that's quite a badge to wear, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I know how hard that whole organization works. So it's great, and another good looking team this year. I really haven't followed it that much. However,
Mhm.
everything that I see seems to indicate that they're going to have a good deep run into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, we went on a heater there for what was it, 10 games in a row back recently, and kind of ran into a little bump there last week. But I recall this time last year, it was the last weekend in November. We lost a game in Moncton. Then after that, we went on an incredible winning streak. It was something like 21 games in a row, and hopefully that'll happen again this year. And last year we kind of peaked a little. We weren't really supposed to be gunning for it last year, but it all worked out and we ended up going to the finals. But hopefully this year we can go once again and win it again. And I can update my tattoo with 2024 champions.
Absolutely. And so back to the book for a second, and I didn't even give you a chance to rip out the title there. The book is called.
Yeah, it's the ultimate hockey joke book, Laugh Your Face Off. And the title for the book came when I was sitting here in my studio one night. Vernon was saying, "Hey, give us a bunch of titles that we can bounce around." So it was around 10:30 at night. I was working on a commercial here in my studio and just racking my brain. What am I going to call this darn book? So they had the ultimate hockey joke book part, but I needed that punchline. So you just combine Laugh Your Face Off with hockey, and it just fit. And so that was the one that won the vote, the majority of the vote with the publisher. And I was just glad that, it's taken off. And thank you to everybody who's purchased the book here so far. We're in our fourth printing. And in publishing, that's pretty cool. So, we started out, I was happy with the first printing, and then I heard there was a second and now a third. So it's really, incredible to see the support, and thanks to everybody for making this, dream come true. I never really planned on this. It kind of fell in my lap, but we're already talking about volume 2 and some other projects down the road. So it's going to be something for Ian to do later on down the road in retirement.
Well, well, yeah, and I was going to ask you, so obviously, when you don't do something like write a book and you don't know what the process is, you can either really like it or not like it, or I'm assuming you enjoyed it, because if you're talking about doing another one, the process and whatnot was I guess fun enough, and that it kept your interest. So, was there any points where you got there where you're just like, what have I done? You know what I mean? Did you have any moments like that?
Yeah, Sean, you certainly learn a lot, through the demo process and then through the whole editing process. And, you're in it for the love of it, and it's a labor of love. And, I certainly enjoyed it. And Vernon and the team, they were really good, to bounce ideas off of. And he was, I'm a rookie at this whole thing. He's a veteran. Vernon's got 34 books out now, and his latest one is Forerunners. A little plug for Vernon right there. It's in stores now. But yeah, no, as I said, it's a total labor of love. And when you're doing something you love, it's not like a job. And this certainly was a lot of fun to do.
No, that's great. So I guess last question, you're a busy guy, you got work to do, but where can my viewers find this book? Because, hey, Christmas is coming up. Would make a great present for some people. Where do they find it?
Well, you can find it in local bookstores. It's, on the shelves at Chapters, any Chapter store, Kohl's, Indigo stores. It's online at their websites. If you're in town, you can go to get a copy of it at Nimbus. And it's also at Amazon.ca, but, it's getting kind of tight to Christmas there. So it's available in most of major bookstores, independent stores as well here in Nova Scotia. And, it's just cool to see this thing sell out. I got a notice from a few of my caper buddies. Went to the Mayflower Mall in Sydney. Your book sold out, bye. But anyway, I think we got about I don't know, 70 or 80 copies up there now, so they're back stocked up, and we're thankful for everybody that's been a part of this ride, and truly grateful.
Well, I mean, that is a pretty cool thing when you see something that you've done that you spent maybe a couple years on, and then all of a sudden it's out there, and sometimes it surprises you, right? I've had that with albums and that type of thing where I forgot I did this. This was a year of my life, and boom, there it is. So it's got to be pretty neat to see that.
Yeah, well, it's something that, I've got a copy in my studio, and and thanks as well to Cam Russell, and as well Kenzie Lalonde and Dan as well. Dan with TSN now, Dan Robertson with his endorsement, and Cam Russell as well, and Kenzie, who is just taken off with TSN. So it's just incredible to have and to hold, and something to pass down to my kids and the grandkids someday, and maybe there'll be a couple of volumes down the road.
Well, I see that because you strike me as a guy that I can almost see the wheels grinding right now about what the next thing's going to be. So that's fantastic, Mr.
Yeah.
Robertson, sir. It's nice to finally meet you. I mean, we've crossed paths a bunch of times, but
Yeah.
hopefully I'll get to see you next Friday night when I'm at the ring.
Hey, you betcha, Sean. And if you're around, pop down to the penalty box. Love to have a chat with you, and look forward to seeing you there. And go Moose, go, eh?
I will indeed. Thank you, sir. And if I'm not talking to you, well, I will talk to you, but have a happy holiday to you and your lovely wife, who I just met last week, too. So that's fantastic.
Hey, thanks, Sean, and keep up the great work with the podcast, and hi to all the listeners and viewers there.
Thank you, man. Talk to you soon. Ciao.